Welcome to another News of the Week episode on this Wednesday evening, and I also just realized that the secondary transfer window in MLS just opened last week, which that probably explains why there has been so many signings and rumors that has happened in the MLS world. And these last couple of days and in this News of the Week episode, it's nothing different, where there definitely were a lot of signings and rumors, and in some cases, a couple of teams were very busy in terms of signing players in these last couple of days. But first, we got to talk about one of the bigger moves from this secondary transfer window and one of the bigger blockbuster moves. That is, the Houston Dynamo and the New England Revolution decided to trade midfielders. So, the former Dynamo midfielder Tommy McNamara is now going to be heading to New England, while Wilfred Zahibo will be heading to Houston. And in addition, Houston will get an international spot from New England, while New England, of course, will get a couple of those general allocation money, also known as Gabber Buck, in the next 2 years. I believe they get 150,000 GAM in 2020 and 50,000 GAM in 2021. But either way, I think this deal is a good deal for both teams, and it seems like the amount that both of these teams decided to do a trade in this seems pretty legit. Obviously, New England, they are adding some more midfield kind of depth in their team. And while I know Tommy McNamara, a lot of Dynamo fans are probably relieved the fact that he's no longer with the team, because he definitely did not had a great time when he was with the Dynamo. At least, hopefully, this will give him a little bit of a change of scenery of going to New England and kind of sort of rediscover his good form that he had with NYCFC. Well, actually, no kidding. When he was with NYCFC, he wasn't really that good either. He was more kind of like a depth piece for NYCFC than actually a starter when he was playing with NYCFC all the way back in their expansion year. Well, Wilfred Zahibo definitely will add some more depth in terms of the Dynamo. Like, the Dynamo, I think their biggest issue right now has to be the midfield and the defense, where there's definitely a lot of question in terms of that spot, because there are a couple of guys on that midfield and defense probably are not good enough to be a starting midfielder and defender for this team. So hopefully adding Zahibo might add them either some more depth, or maybe he could be a starter in that midfielder for the Dynamo. But either way, I think this is a fair trade for both of these teams. Now, New England also did another midfielder besides Tommy McNamara, as FC Cincinnati was another team that was very busy in these last couple of days in the trade block, as they decided to trade Mane to New England in exchange for an international spot. Again, more depth in terms of the midfield for New England, and I guess maybe this is kind of their attempt to trying to replace, well, I wouldn't say replace, but trying to fit Mane in the same spot as Carlos Hill in that central attacking midfielder. Obviously, Carlos Hill, he is out with a long-term injury, so New England need to have an option. And you know, Mane, he definitely did not do very well when he was with FC Cincinnati, but again, maybe now he's going to go to New England. This could maybe be a change of scenery for him, and maybe he can be effective for New England, as he, of course, is going to be going to the Revs. Now, besides that, FC Cincinnati also trade Fatai Alashe to Columbus. The Ohio team in these last couple of days has been really busy. Like last week, I talked about Columbus making a couple of big signing in terms of helping shore up their defense. Well, they're gonna get a midfielder from their hated rival, and it seemed like both of these teams, despite the fact that they're a hated rival, they love to trade players with each other, because now Fatai Alashe is going to be going to Columbus in exchange for a second-round pick and 50,000 general allocation money, and that's good on Fatai Alashe, the fact that he is going to Columbus, because I feel like when the Quakes decided to trade him to Cincinnati, that might have not been a good spot for him to head to, and the fact that he wasn't really getting minutes with Cincinnati, he really need to try to get a bit of a change of scenery and maybe get a chance to to be in a competitive team. Well, that is exactly what is going to happen. And although I know he's probably not going to get as much minutes with that Columbus team, because that Columbus team definitely have a pretty stacked midfielder, they can use him as kind of like a depth piece. And that, again, I'm very happy the fact that Alashe finally gets a chance to be in a competitive team after, for the last couple of years, he hasn't really been on one, with the way that he was part of the Cincinnati team that just had one of the worst expansion season ever, and also all those years with the Quakes that were just a mediocre team in MLS, and now he's finally get to join a team that could definitely compete to be one of the top team in the Eastern Conference. FC Cincinnati also are in talk to sign Camilo Makujito, I think that's how you pronounce, from Brentford, and I guess this might be a signing to replace Fatah Alashe. I haven't heard a lot about this guy, so I don't exactly know, is he going to be a guy that's going to be good for FC Cincinnati. But either way, I'm kind of also surprised the fact that they decided to go with a defensive mid, because again, I think the biggest issue for Cincinnati is still going to be on the attacking end. And sure, you know, doing this MLS's back tournament, they finally kind of found ways to, of course, score goals, but at the same time, I just still not sure exactly who is definitely going to be the main goal scorer of this team. A lot of people will say, well, isn't that going to be Jurgen Locadia? Well, it might be, but so far in these first couple of games that he has appeared for FC Cincinnati, he hasn't really scored a lot of goals, and he only scored 2 goals, which one of them, of course, was a penalty that he was able to put away against the Timbers, and that he probably should have been at free goals now if he didn't just miss that big chance in the 87th minute against the Timbers that could have gave FC Cincinnati the upset in that game. I don't know why, how I actually got into that kind of connection by talking this move, but yeah, I mean, that has to be still fresh in FC Cincinnati fans' mind, the fact that they were that close in terms of knocking out the eventual winners of the MLS is Back tournament. Now, Dallas, of course, have signed Brazilian goalkeeper Felipe, I believe, Megilaro, I think that's how you say, and attacking midfielder Andre Ricardo on loan for Medellin. This was a move that I kind of talked about last week, that they were in rumor to get him on loan from Independiente Medellin, and it seemed like they did they have got that deal done. While signing, they also, of course, as I said, got a Brazilian goalkeeper that is, I'm just going to call him Felipe from now on, and that he was actually on the Brazilian U20 team and was also on the same team that Neymar was when he was on the Brazilian under-20 team, and that I think this is definitely a good signing in terms of them trying to replace Jesse Gonzalez, that they, of course, unfortunately let go of him a couple of weeks back. But if you are Jimmy Maurer and the FC Dallas goalkeeper, this move has to drive you absolutely nuts. Like, I thought for sure that this was really the time where Jimmy Maurer was going to get his chance to be a starting goalkeeper for FC Dallas. And that the first couple of games that I've seen him perform with Dallas, and that it seemed like he kind of stable his starting spot, he actually looked like a decent MLS goalkeeper, and that he can definitely be a guy that will be replacing Jesse Gonzalez behind the post. But it turns out that's not what FC Dallas is thinking about, and that, you know, if I'm Jimmy Maurer, I wouldn't be surprised at not only the fact that I would be angry about this move, but I won't be surprised if he asked to just join another team, because I really think he, with some of the performance that he have done with FC Dallas, which hasn't been a lot, he definitely has the caliber in terms of a starting goalkeeper. And later on in this news of the week, I will kind of also mention that one team probably might think about actually giving a call to Dallas to maybe get Jimmy Maurer, knowing the fact that their starting goalkeeper is now out for the season because of a hip surgery. But moving on, in terms of the next news, is that LAFC signed defender Mohamed Traore using the top spot in the waiver order. Now, this one is kind of a little bit strange, because I have never heard of this guy, and I didn't even know that he was actually waived by by an MLS team. But from what I heard, it looked like he used to be on the Orlando City Academy system, and that of course he got waived by that spot. And now LAFC decided to kind of picked him up and sign him by getting him on the top of the waiver order. And LAFC also had to like pay $50,000 to Vancouver in order to get the top spot of the waiver order. And the waiver order is kind of very similar to how the allocation order there goes. But you know, the other thing that's kind of strange about this move is that he's only 18 years old, and I know LAFC, they definitely are trying to fix their defense, as that is pretty much the biggest weakness I think this LAFC team has. But signing an 18-year-old defender, that seems, for me, this seems like kind of a development move that LAFC has decided to sign him. I just feel like he's probably not going to be the guy that's going to be maybe starting for this team, and he's just going to be add in again as a development piece, and maybe be there just as a player that is going to add some more depth in terms of this LAFC defense. But this is kind of a weird kind of move, and it just kind of makes it even weirder, the fact that he actually got it off of a waiver order, which again, I didn't even know he was actually waived by an MLS team. Now, speaking of weird move, the Houston Dynamo signed former LA Galaxy forward Ariel Lassiter, and I believe he was actually in the Costa Rican League, and they said that he kind of teared up the Costa Rican League, and it seemed like the Dynamo took a notice of that, and they decided to pick him up on this team. Now, what's weird about this move is that strikers are not really the biggest issue that the Dynamo has on this team. In fact, I think going forward on the attack, that's pretty much their strength in this Dynamo team. Like, unless I would think that they are thinking about maybe selling Manotas, or at least in the near future, and that Ariel, Lassiter could be the one that is going to replace either Manotas or at least in that spot. I just feel like there's other spot that Houston could potentially sign instead of getting a forward, but we shall see whether or not if he is going, there's already a lot of depth for this Dynamo team going forward on the attack, so I'm not quite sure, is he going to be a guy that is either going to be a starter for this team, or he's just going to be coming off the bench for this Dynamo team. But again, it's a very strange kind of signing, considered that's not the biggest priority that I think the Dynamo need to focus right now. Now, the Colorado Rapids just recently rejected a $400,000 offer from Barnsley for Jonathan Lewis. And I'll tell you what, whoever the Barnsley scout official for that team, they must have been watching MLS for the past couple of weeks, because out of nowhere, Barnsley, who I never thought that this would be a team that almost got relegated into League One in England last year, I never thought that they would actually start paying attention to MLS and maybe get a couple of some of our youngsters as a way to kind of develop them and maybe get them to make the jump to Europe. And, for Jonathan Lewis, there's always a lot of discussion about the fact that whether or not is this kind of the right time for him to make the jump, and that it's kind of sad to also say that Jonathan Lewis, for the past couple of years, I remember when he was with NYCFC, and that a lot of people kind of scaled him as one of the next best thing for the team, and also for the U.S. men's national team going forward, and that it just kind of didn't work out. And now that he, of course, kind of got that change of scenery by going to the Colorado Rapids, he hasn't really been starting games for the Rapids either. So you wonder, if you're not starting games for your team in MLS, I don't know how in the world are you going to make that jump of potentially going to Europe. But it looked like this might be a chance where he could, of course, do that, although the Rapids basically just say no, and that they want to, of course, keep him. Now, $400,000 for Jonathan Lewis is kind of right around the same price, because, again, he is a player that whether he's with the Rapids or with NYCFC hasn't really been a starter for those teams. So I think that offer and the stock price that I think for the past couple of years for Jonathan Lewis has really kind of dimmed down with the way that he hasn't got a lot of minutes with his respective MLS team. But it looks like Colorado want Barnsley to maybe get a better offer, and we shall see whether or not if Barnsley is going to increase that offer, or they're not going to even worry about that, and they're going to be more focused on probably getting another MLS player in Reggie Cannon that was rumored just a couple of days ago. Speaking of Reggie Cannon, there's also been a lot of rumor that he is actually on his way out of FC Dallas, and that there was even a reports saying that after one of the FC Dallas versus Nashville game, you can see that Reggie Cannon is basically thanking the supporters, and that it's pretty clear that that is kind of the sign that he is on his way out to Dallas, and that it seemed like he's ready to make the jump of going to Europe. So I'm going to keep an eye on where exactly he is going to be land. But the last thing we heard about him going to Europe was potentially going to Barnsley, although unlike how Barnsley gave an offer to the Rapids for Jonathan Lewis, Barnsley did not actually submit an offer to Dallas to see how much they, of course, would want to pay in order to get Reggie Cannon away from FC Dallas. Now, Christian Pavone might actually be heading back to Boca Juniors due to the high asking price the Galaxy will need to pay in order to get him outright. And I know this might sound crazy, and hear me out, Galaxy fan. I think this is actually the right move. The fact that Pavone actually is going to be going back to the Galaxy, and that the Galaxy probably shouldn't think about actually paying that high amount of money that they, of course, are going to get him outright. Now, I understand that Pavone has probably been the one glimmer of positive for the Galaxy, other than a very disappointing kind of performance that they had in the MLS is back tournament. But the problem is that I really think that instead of them just overpaying and potentially have to pay a very high fee to get Pavone outright, they need to invest that same amount of fees that they potentially going to have to pay for Pavone in terms of their starting 11. Like, I mean, right now, this Galaxy starting 11 is a USL level kind of starting 11, and that unless if they can get some players in the defensive end, and also get some more players on the attack that can really fix that attack that looked very lackluster in this MLS's back tournament, they are not going to also do that and be able to pay that high amount of money to Boca Juniors and able to get Christian Pavone outright. Like, basically what I'm kind of trying to say is they rather spend money on improving their squad instead of actually just paying that high amount of money to just keep Pavone in there, because I have a feeling Pavone doesn't even want to be there anymore with the way that how bad this team has gone ever since, of course, he started to come here with the LA Galaxy. Now, talking about kind of now moving away from the transfer talk and now talk about injuries. And how earlier I said that there was a team that has a starting goalkeeper that unfortunately is out for the season because of hip injury. Well, unfortunately, that team is one of my favorite team, that is Minnesota United, who just cannot catch a break in terms of getting caught in the injury news, as it is announced that Tyler Miller is going to be out for the season as he undergoes hip surgery. Now, as much as I know this is a big blow for the Loons, and there's going to be a lot of question mark of what exactly the Loons are going to get, this necessary isn't really the worst thing, considering the fact that, I think losing a starting goalkeeper isn't as bad as losing one of your star players, especially on the attack, for the rest of the season. And I have seen teams where when they lose their starting goalkeeper, they still looks fine, and in some cases actually look better when they are, of course, without him for the rest of the season. Now, that being said, this is not to discredit Tyler Miller and the fact that this is not a big loss for the Loons, but I think the Loons will survive in terms of losing Tyler Miller for the rest of the season. Plus, you know, as I mentioned earlier, they might maybe give a call to FC Dallas and maybe try to get Jimmy Maurer to come to Minnesota, because he is a guy that, as I said, he looked like a guy that could definitely be in the short term to replace Tyler Miller in that spot. And also, if we're not going to do that, maybe it's time to kind of call up some of our backup goalkeeper that we tends to never use. One of those backup goalkeeper is a prospect goalkeeper by the name of Dane Sinclair, and that a lot of people rated him as a goalkeeper that is going to be the future for this team. He's actually on loan with San Antonio FC down in the USL, so maybe this might be a time for Minnesota to recall him from loan and actually give him a chance in the big time. Or we could also have a second option, which is another goalkeeper that we just signed this offseason, and I cannot pronounce his last name whatsoever, but it starts with an R, and his first name is Greg, and I'm just going to kind of call him Greg from now on. But this is a guy that we, of course, signed from Louisville. He actually was a backup goalkeeper for Orlando City for a very long time, and that he also had some experience with down in the USL too. So he could also be another goalkeeper that we can call up as a backup goalkeeper to kind of fill in the spot that Tyler Miller unfortunately leaves right now. But either way, it'll be interesting to see what Minnesota is going to do, and whether or not if the Loons are going to go with the same route that FC Dallas is going to go with, maybe go into the market and find a goalkeeper to temporarily replace the spot that unfortunately Tyler Miller leaves out right now. But finally, in terms of the last news for this news of the week, is that I want to kind of quickly talk about where should the U.S. versus Mexico World Cup qualifying match should be hosted. Now, I know a lot of people probably are going to say, well, this is an easy question to answer. It's obviously going to be Columbus, because Columbus, for the past couple of World Cup qualifying session, have at least hosted one game, and that one game is always going to be U.S. versus Mexico. And it also makes sense, the fact that Columbus is going to get a new stadium that's going to be opening in 2021. So it makes even more sense now, the fact that the U.S. versus Mexico game is going to be staying in Columbus, and that the U.S. always have a good record against Mexico whenever the match is played in Columbus. That being said, I also feel like, as much as I know that's probably the option we could choose, I won't be surprised if the U.S. Soccer Federation also choose a different city, which I hope when they choose a different city, they don't just screw it up in a way where it clearly does not give the U.S. an advantage in the World Cup qualifying. I mean, remember how in the last World Cup qualifying that the U.S. Soccer Federation thought that one of their home match that they get in the World Cup qualifying is playing against Costa Rica down at Red Bull Arena? Yeah, that was a terrible idea, and that felt like basically was an extra away game that ultimately the U.S. would have lost that one. And that if we would have maybe, I'm not saying that a home field advantage might actually paid off, and if we didn't have like maybe 95% Costa Rican fans that was attend the games, that maybe of course ultimately cost us to lose the game. But I feel like if that game was hosted in a different city, maybe the U.S. could have had an advantage. And you got to also keep in mind, you know, the U.S., this has been a problem for them, and it's now even a bigger issue with the way that they missed the World Cup in the last World Cup cycle, is the fact that fan interest is definitely at an all-time low for this national team, and that fans are not going to go to games. So when you of course are playing against the opposition, you know there's going to be more away fans or more opposition fans that's going to be in the stadium than actual U.S. fans. So if that's the case, they need to of course come up of another unique way, and another unique way to kind of have a home field advantage is, why not use weather as one of your home field advantage? And I know Taylor Twellman also talked about how potentially Minnesota might be a choice for the U.S. to play against Mexico, and I think that's a great idea too, and usually I don't agree with Taylor Twellman with a lot of things, but I thought this was a great idea considering the fact that Minnesota, just like Columbus, have a brand new shiny stadium, and knowing the fact that if the US are playing against Mexico in the November FIFA window, well, that will be perfect time to play against Mexico because, you know, it's going to be cold in Minnesota, and we know before that when the US are playing in the cold weather environment, they are able to most of the time able to get a win. I mean, we might actually even see kind of a repeat of a snow classico that we saw back, I think, in 2013 in that famous U.S. versus Costa Rica game where the U.S. of course won 1-0 against Costa Rica in basically a blizzard condition in Colorado. I mean, I want to see that happen again in Minnesota if that, of course, is going to be possible. So, yeah, there is definitely some option in terms of how the U.S. could be playing Mexico in the World Cup qualifying, and that, again, I know Columbus is probably the easy choice, but I won't be surprised if the U.S. Soccer Federation is thinking about choosing another city, and that as long as that other city is not in an area where there's going to be a big population of Mexican Americans, so some of those cities like Chicago, LA, for example, like if the U.S. play Mexico in Chicago and LA again, I am just going to pull my hair and just get super angry again at the U.S. Soccer Federation, knowing the fact that those two cities are literally the second home for the Mexican national team with the amount of Mexican American population there is. But if they play in any other city besides those one, or a city that doesn't have as much of a Mexican American population, then I won't be surprised if they're going to be playing in another venue besides Columbus as the easy option. But that being said, let me know in the comments below what do you think of that, and also all these other news on the board, and let me also know in the comments below if there's any news that I haven't mentioned on the board that you want me to talk about in the comments section below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.